there has been a decision concerning TROs. How many people know the 4 elements of a TRO? Okay. What is the 4th element?
The offense to the country or the state.
Public policy.
Public people.
What is the 3rd element?
Is
irreparable harm to self.
Success.
They're not going to
Irreparable
get
harm
harmed.
to who?
To yourself.
Yes. Okay, in this case, the plaintiff. Now, here's, I'm going to abridge this. We know what the first 2 are, obviously. See, I believe the 4th one's the most important. This attorney believes that the 3rd one, and I wrote 4th one because that's the one I think is the most important. But the attorney may be absolutely correct on this basis. I think the court cares most about this. I think the courts care most about public policy than they do anything else. Okay, that's my firm belief in every aspect of the court. Courts don't care about right or wrong. They don't care about anything. They care about public policy. Keeping the status quo going. Keeping the people that are in charge, and the slave. That's my belief. So, somehow we've got to take the 3rd element into the 4th element. But let me go into what has been decided on this 3rd element thing. Did anybody read that thing on the internet about it? Okay. I wish y'all had, because it's going to sound a little convoluted. When we write up a TRO, and almost every TRO I've ever read, which is dozens, not just about real property in this scenario, but having been an inventor, dealing with temporary restraining orders over patent infringements. I used to work on a lot of patent infringement cases a long time. TROs are also used, well, let's face it, this is America. If you got a penis, you have no rights when you get a divorce, so women enter TROs over men all the time. Okay, 90% of them are completely unfounded, but it gives the woman a lot of power in the divorce and the custody proceedings. Any attorney knows that trick. So we're familiar with temporary restraining orders in several aspects of our lives. They still all have the 4 same elements. But here's where the difference, and perhaps it applies to all of them too, but here's where it's going to matter to us. In the 3rd element, it was decided that the irreparable harm, okay, let me stand back here. I'm sorry, I'm misquoting a case. Let's go to the merits of the case, the 2nd element. I apologize greatly, I just got confused over 2 cases. We're going to talk about the merits. In this case, Arizona, I think it was a Tucson case. Now I'm sorry, I'm getting a little confused. The merits. The merits are incumbent and on the TRO and not the totality of the case. And that springs forth to the 3rd and 4th element. That the harm will be caused to you, and it's bad public policy for the courts to allow harm to be caused to you. You see how I'm getting a little convoluted, but I'm going to try and straighten this out. The merits, the way it's worded, it says the merits are going to rule in favor for the plaintiff for the case. That is not what the jurisprudence now tells us. To more correctly word it, that the merits for the TRO are only relevant to the TRO. In other words, when you look at every TRO, except for this recent jurisprudence, the way we've been kind of taken off the trail, misguided, is we've tried to operate on the concept of the merits being for the whole case. That it appears that you have enough grounds to win the whole case. Mistake. Big frigging mistake. Court decided that really, the Supreme Court decided that there's 4 elements to a TRO a long time ago. Everybody understand that? That's where we get the jurisprudence that there's 4 elements, was a Supreme Court case a long time ago. So for years, they were saying that the way the Supreme Court wrote it up was that this TRO is incumbent on the process of the whole case, and the merits were relevant to whether or not you'd win the whole case. Wrong. The merits are only relevant to whether or not you'll win the TRO. The merits do not fall back to the whole case. So when you argue or you write your pleading for the TRO, you're only required to establish that the merits are in favor of you for the TRO. Doesn't have anything to do with the rest of the case. Did that make sense? And I can tell you when I read that, it was one of those duh moments. Because there's a fucking clause in there that nobody pays attention to, and I understand why we don't. Because we read this shit, we do our pleading, we go blah, 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 okay, here's this, that, and the other thing. Remember we were doing one of the TROs and we got this whole, we got to print it. There was like 11 things that had to be sent out. Some of these cases, you got so many people in there. By the time you get done making copies, you know, you got a 50-page document with exhibits and everything. And there's like, you know, 8 banks, and you got one for the court, one for the judge. You've printed out 11 copies of 50 pages. That's 550 friggin' pages, and you kind of let them go. You know, this shit is really not free. I mean, between the paper and the ink, you've actually spent some real money. Not to mention all that time. So you go, I don't want to do that. But then you look at the rule with TRO and it says, damn it, it's got to be separate. The TRO has to be separate from the whole fucking case. It doesn't matter what exhibits you have in the complaint. It doesn't matter what exhibits you have in the case. The TRO is almost like a sub-case to the main case. So in your TRO, you can't go, but look at that exhibit in the complaint. No, it's got to be in that TRO. So when you look at and you're printing all this shit out and you're doing it, it's like, fuck, I got to do it again. So it makes sense. The merits apply only to the TRO and not the whole case. Do you get what I'm saying? Yeah.
I ordered that jurisdictionary course for whatever the price was. And he keeps harping on that. He keeps saying that each pleading has to stand on its own merit.
Okay, yes, that's true. That we're talking about, yes, a pleading has to stand on its own
But
merit.
isn't a TRO a type of pleading?
A TRO is not, yes, it is a pleading, but it's more than that because it can actually be separated from the case. We can't normally do that. A TRO is a request for an action by the judge post haste. I mean, forthwith, he's got to write an order. Not always true. I mean, how long have we been waiting for an order on your case? On the TRO?
Since August 2nd.
I mean, it's getting towards, well, it's 3 weeks, I guess. It's a long time to wait for an emergency order that's supposed to be done in 5 days. But yes, pleadings should stand on their own merits. So that's even more evidence of what we're talking about. But specifically, the TRO, a pleading can relate to the whole rest of the case. TRO can't. TRO is separate. And that's why it makes sense. And that's why when I read this, I'm like, how did we miss this one? The merits, when you're writing up the TRO, the merits of whether or not you'll win is not the merits on whether or not you'll win the case. It's whether or not you should be granted the TRO. You see the difference? Should you be granted a TRO once you establish prima facie and incontrovertibly that the documents that have commenced the non-judicial foreclosure proceeding are fraudulent and only evidence of felonious acts, and have nothing to do with a non-judicial proceeding. Did it make sense?
Yes.
That's it. So that's quite a bit different of a concept in a TRO.
So, Irvin just said, so how do you do it or redo it properly?
Well,
What are you filing or?
Well, it depends. If you've done a TRO and it's been denied,
yes,
then you'd go for a motion for reconsideration for the judge's misconception of the Supreme Court decision, or the judge's misinterpretation of the Supreme Court decision, and then you'd restate 2 as it relates to 3 and 4. Yeah.
okay,
What was the name of this case?
I can't remember.
It was down in Tucson?
One of them
It's
was.
on Jeff Barnes' website. That's what it's.
Oh, okay, yeah, it's on Jeff Barnes. Yeah, foreclosuredefensenetwork.com. And if you scroll down, it's probably the 5th case down. You should read all those cases. It doesn't list the full case, just a summary of the case. You should read it all. But it's like the 5th one down. You'll see it says Arizona, Tucson, or something. But read it. He explains it very simply, and he's right. He's absolutely friggin' right. And I know
And you
that.
said-
What's that?
I'm sorry, finish.
I know that everybody's been doing the TROs incorrectly, and I can understand where that confusion line. Yeah.
Well, the template for the TRO came from one that was won by an attorney. That's what's surprising me. I mean, I understand everything you're saying, but yeah, Mark Tucker is who we took that TRO from.
Right. That especially those aspects of the TRO. But there again, is he winning anymore with the TRO? You know. Okay, you can move for a decision based on pleadings. Like most litigators don't usually do that because they want to get in there for an oral argument. So we don't know what he did in his oral argument. Because I doubt the decision was based on a pleading alone. You know, these big money attorneys right now are getting like Fred Barnes, or not Fred Barnes, it's Jeff Barnes, who's very good at his litigation. He's winning his case in court, not on pleadings. So, yeah, I don't know how Tucker won that and everybody else is getting their butt kicked on the pleading. So we're going to alter that pleading pursuant to this new ruling. And I think it will make a difference. Because I don't think I think that's one of the things, one of the tricks the judge is using. And Barnes even goes into that we've been tricked, we've been duped. You know, the judge is making the decision based on whether or not he thinks we'll win the whole case. Separate. So whether or not you have the grounds to win that TRO. And there again, we can talk about this for hours, because you could go into, does the woman win everything in the divorce because she wins a restraining order against her husband? No. No. They can do all their lies and plant the evidence and get the restraining order against their husband and still end up losing the divorce once the husband proves it was all bullshit.